Hello and welcome to my channel. Today's tragic tale is about 35-year-old Bobbi Holman. Bobbi was born April 10, 1961 in Paducah, Kentucky. The year was 1996. A little about the town of Paducah before we get into the tragic tale of Bobbi's passing. Paducah is on the Ohio River, which runs between the border of Illinois and Kentucky. It is named after an Indian tribe. It has a historic downtown area filled with art galleries, antique shops, boutiques, pubs, and restaurants. There is a flood wall along the Ohio River that contains murals that tell the story and history of Paducah. There are also riverboat cruises that transport passengers from Missouri through Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, as well as dinner cruises. Paducah was also featured in the 1962 film How the West Was Won. Now let's get to know Bobbi Holman. Bobbi was one of 5 girls born to Robert Holman, known as Bob, and her mother Verna. Bob was well known in Paducah. He opened the first Dairy Queen in 1949. Bob wanted to be more than just an ice cream salesman and wanted to offer burgers at his restaurant. But since Dairy Queen was a franchise, they wouldn't allow it. So Bob ditched the Dairy Queen and created his own restaurant called Bob's Drive-In. Bob was ahead of his time for sure because Dairy Queen decided years later to produce more than just ice cream. Bob opened 2 more restaurants after that, Roberto's Pizza and the Red Heifer. Growing up, Bobbi inherited her father's business sense. Bobbi got her first job working in a clothing store while in high school. High school is also where she met her future husband, Neil. After graduating in 1979, Neil and Bobbi went to separate colleges. He went to Murray State and she went to Western Kentucky. Bobbi only completed 1 semester and moved back to Paducah when her mother, Verna, was diagnosed with cancer. Verna passed away on January 9, 1980. Neil and Bobbi got married in 1984. Bobbi began working at her family's restaurant in the Holman House, which was located downtown in the Irvin Cobb Hotel. Neil had built a house in the suburbs for the 2 of them to live. Bobbi's sister Regina lived close by. Eventually, the downtown restaurant relocated to an area near the mall and national chain retail stores. The new location was bigger and had 3 dining rooms, 1 with a buffet area. Neil and Bobbi owned this location, and Bobbi's father, Bob, and his new wife, Linda, worked there. Customers raved about the food and Linda's pies. While Bobbi managed the restaurant, Neil worked for his family's construction company. Although Bobbi didn't graduate from college, she was a graduate of the Leadership Paducah program. From 1991 through 1992, she was president of the Paducah Hospitality Association and was on the board of directors of the Paducah Area Chamber of Commerce. In 1992, Neil and Bobbi had their first son, and in 1995, their second son was born. In fall of 1994, or early 1995, Neil started having an affair with the secretary who worked at his family's construction company. She was married, and allegedly her husband, who went by Dickie, found out about the affair and threatened to expose the affair to Bobbi unless Neil paid him $2,500. This was said to have occurred in January of 1995. Court records allege Neil paid the money. However, Dickie told Bobbi about the affair anyway. A friend of Bobbi's said Bobbi had hired a private investigator to confirm the affair. Perhaps she did after Dickie self-canceled himself on March 14, 1995. In March of 1996, Neil moved out of the house and into an apartment with his girlfriend. On July 16, 1996, Neil had taken the older son to play volleyball with relatives of Bobbi's family. Shortly before 10:30 p.m., Neil was returning the 4-year-old boy home and found Bobbi dead. She was found in a tub that was half filled with water in an upstairs bathroom. Their 10-month-old son was asleep in another room and was unharmed. Neil and his brother-in-law took the two boys to Bobbi's sisters, Regina's, who lived on the same street, and they called the police. Bobbi's autopsy revealed her death could have been between 8:30 and 9 p.m. She had been strangled and suffered blunt force trauma to the head. Both Neil and his girlfriend had airtight alibis for that time. Within months of the murder, Neil and his family remodeled the second floor of the house and sold it. 6 months after Bobbi's death, Neil, his girlfriend, and the boys moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. Between the sale of the home and the life insurance, Neil received close to $1.2 million. March 15, 1997. Neil returned to Paducah to take care of some family business with the construction company. Velva Buford, who was a friend of Neil's girlfriend, contacted Neil and asked him to come to her house. When Neil arrived, he was confronted by a police officer named Randall, saying he had evidence that Neil had paid to have his wife murdered and that he could make it go away if Neil paid him $300,000. Supposedly, this evidence was found when he raided a motorcycle gang Hells Angels clubhouse. March 16, 1997. Neil and his brother went to the Marshall County Sheriff Department to report an attempted extortion. The sheriff needed proof of this and wanted a recording. Neil was going back to North Carolina, so it was up to his brother to negotiate with the extortionists. Neil made a recorded phone call to Velva to discuss the offer Randall had made. He told her he would be going back to North Carolina and that she would have to deal with his brother. Wearing a wire, Neil's brother met with both Velva and Randall and renegotiated the price to $95,000. Turns out Randall wasn't a police officer after all, and apparently stole incident reports and crime tape from the Chicago Police Department. How exactly he pulled that off is unknown. March 25, 1997, Velva and Randall were arrested for extortion. Meanwhile, Neil was still in North Carolina. In the recorded conversations, Neil was implicated in seeking out someone to take out his wife. Allegedly, around fall of 1995, Neil had begun plotting with Velva and her husband to have Bobbi murdered. Velva's husband contacted his friend Randall from Illinois. Neil never met Randall in person. That is why he didn't recognize him the day he went to Velva's house. Supposedly, Neil had provided Velva with $5,000 to help him find someone to carry out the crime. Neil gave Velva a photo of Bobbi, a description of Bobbi's car, and a floor plan to the restaurant to give the hired hitman. In February 1996, Randall was given $45,000 to carry out the deed. It was supposed to be done in February 1996 and happen at the restaurant to make it look like a robbery. When it didn't happen, Velva made several attempts to call Randall, and he did not answer those calls. For the remainder of 1997, both Velva and Randall remained in custody while Neil remained free. However, when 1998 rolled around, Neil was expected he would be arrested, so he contacted a law firm and put the Holman House restaurant up for sale. Bobbi's father and stepmother were still working at the restaurant when Neil's attorney showed up and told them the restaurant was being sold and they needed to leave. February 20th, 1998, Neil was arrested and indicted on conspiracy to commit murder. Both Velva and Randall took plea deals for their part and were going to testify against Neil. Velva pled guilty to conspiracy. Randall pled guilty to extortion but wasn't charged with conspiracy. Randall was also able to provide the restaurant blueprint and photo of Bobbi as evidence against Neil. March 11, 1999. Neil was found guilty of conspiracy to murder his wife. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison. He only served 7 years and was released. April 1999, Velva Buford was sentenced to 10 years. After serving her time, she moved to Texas and passed away on May 18, 2018. Randall also served an undisclosed amount of time for extortion. Bobbi's father was able to open another restaurant which was named Holman House Cafeteria. Bob and Linda retired on June 28, 2014. Bob passed away on April 10, 2015. Linda continued to sell her pies until 2021. No idea what happened to Neil's girlfriend. She did stick with him through the trial and even offered to testify that she gave the picture of Bobbi to Randall. However, Neil's attorneys advised against it as she had already given a statement she knew nothing about the plan and she would be convicted of perjury. They definitely did not stay together. He currently has a new woman in his life and has for quite a few years. Both Bobbi and Neil's adult sons are married, and Neil does have a relationship with both of them. As far as Bobbi, friends and family described her as very driven. She put her heart and soul into that restaurant. She loved her sons and was very close to her family. It is a shame she never got to see her sons grow into men. It is doubtful either of them remember their mother. One of them ran for state representative in 2018 but lost. In Bobbi's honor, there is a scholarship named the Bobbi Holman Award, and it is awarded by the Paducah Hospitality Association to a chosen member of the community to help promote and enhance their restaurant to increase tourism. No one has ever been charged with Bobbi's murder. It still remains unsolved as of 2024. This concludes Bobbi Holman's story. Thank you so much for listening. If you choose to subscribe, I'll catch you on the next video.